Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of A Handful of Hope. Oops, I just clicked the wrong button. I'm so happy and grateful to have Cathy with us today. Cathy, whose life's mission is to be a global thinker building a community of food specialists to make the food system sustainable, equitable, and resilient in in-world hunger. After a 20-year career teaching undergraduates food science and nutrition, Cathy started the Food Industry Employment Program to help small food businesses with food safety and food science. She works with food entrepreneurs who have an established product line and basic food handling training whose first priority is to protect their customers. She helps clients develop a food safety plan and scale up their business while allowing them to maintain integrity with their values of creating minimally processed foods. Her goal is that clients will make food at cost that is safe, tasty, and compliant with federal, state, and local regulations. Her business tagline is, "Remember, safety first, non-compliance equals death." Additionally, Cathy is writing a book, Food Science and Food Systems, A Need for Change. The main goal of this book is to bridge the gap between food scientists and the people working to strengthen the food system. Originally from Birmingham, England, she moved to the US in 1995 and became a US citizen in 2008. She now lives in the very south of New Jersey and enjoys walking in nature, knitting, spindle spinning, and music when not thinking about food. Wash your damn hands. Cathy, thank you so much for being here. I love that you stuck the wash your damn hands in.
Definitely wash your damn hands. I mean, should have been doing that all along. I'm surprised at how many people have needed to be reminded of that at this moment. So, yeah. So thank you for inviting me on to be part of your Handful of Hope.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the wash your damn hands is funny. I can't tell you how many messages I've gotten from friends, and the underlying theme is my hands are starting to crack and bleed from washing them so damn much.
Well, maybe turn the temperature of the water down a little, and then also get some hand lotion, moisturizer. So. Yeah, I mean, you do have to acknowledge that, yes, it's a challenging time. I think washing your hands is a minor part of that, to be honest. Everyone is struggling. A lot of my clients have had their kitchens close around them, and so they can't carry on producing. Or if they can carry on producing, people aren't buying the luxury items a lot of my small entrepreneurs were producing. Or half their business was catering, and that's gone. So we have to acknowledge that we're all in this together. The whole world is in this together. The other thing I feel we have to acknowledge, this isn't going to be over quick. I mean, even if they discover a vaccine, we're not going to have it worldwide or countrywide within a year. I mean, we'll be lucky to get it within a year, which means even when we go back we're never going to go back to an open society again until that's available. And I think in that time, so we're talking 12 months, in that time, we're going to have a very different attitude to food, I mean, in particular, and to social life. Whether we consider going out to eat as a special treat, like we used to when I was a kid, we went out for family celebrations only. Not the everyday once a week thing that we got used to in the last sort of 10, 15 years. Or whether we even don't want to go out and socialize because we've got so used to not being sociable, or we've got used to being sociable in a more remote way. It'll be interesting. I think that it's something that we have to be aware of and we have to start planning for. And we have to start planning for so that we can have a say in what our future food system is going to look like. We've seen a lot of issues that have concerned me. The fact that when the schools closed, the biggest concern wasn't necessarily the education the kids were getting. Oh, we could deal with that remotely. The concern was that how many of them were dependent on those school lunches and school suppers and school breakfasts for food. And that meant the school districts had to put in a system. And they had to get the USDA to agree to it. They couldn't just put in the system. If they wanted to get funding for it, they had to get the federal government to agree that they could start their summer school program earlier. And then they had to find a way to do distribution in a place when we're sheltering in place or lockdown or whatever that would reach the majority of the children that needed it. So it's been, that to me was the biggest eye-opener. I mean, I knew this, but it was the biggest eye-opener, the problem with our food system, particularly under an emergency, that too many people are not part of the regular food system.
As a consumer, my relationship to the food system is probably like most people, right? You go to the grocery store and what you need to get is going to be there. And up until the last 30 days, that included everything like toilet paper. And it's funny because I've noticed in the last 30 days, or I guess even longer, the kind of panic buying started before then, but how I consider my process of getting food, I'm much more conscious about it than I was before. And I'm much more considerate of the notion that the things that I always would just expect to be there, there's this expectation, right, that I'm going to go in and no matter what time of day I go in, whatever I need is going to be there. Just like magic appears. And then now there's this much more consideration that there's a real possibility that I go what I want to get and I go in, depending on what time I go in, it might not even be there. Or there might be 50 other people wrestling to try to get that one thing that I want. Whatever comes of society from this, wherever we evolve into or for, how critical is the food system going to be in that evolution? And where does it evolve? I mean, what does that evolution look like?
I mean, I think the food system is critical, and I think it's something that I find very interesting that we don't consider in the States, that we do see in Europe more often. That food is it's a human right. If you look at the Geneva Human Rights, the access to food is one of our human rights, and Americans take it for granted to start with, that we have access to food, and then they also consider the government shouldn't be part of it. I mean, they also think that the government, I mean, in the toilet paper issue, there was no reason, I mean, supermarkets themselves ended up rationing, but there's no reason in Europe and places like that where you could step in and the government could say, we're going to ration things. And I think if it comes to food, and if we see issues with the food supply, that may happen. But there isn't actually a shortage of food supply. There isn't actually a shortage of toilet paper. It's just all in the wrong place, right? I mean, I think hotels have more toilet paper than they know what to do with at the moment because they're not open. But that toilet paper isn't necessarily the right kind of toilet paper to sell commercially, to sell to the general public, because it's wrapped in such big containers. You can't sell the individual. People aren't used to buying, let me put it that way, individual rolls of toilet paper unless they're packaged somehow. Yeah. I mean, we're starting to see the paper packages, but that takes time and money. And if you're a toilet manufacturer, you probably have so many lines that do supermarket toilet paper and so many lines that do commercial toilet paper. And you can't just switch. You can't just suddenly say, I'm going to put more down this line. That line is probably at maximum speed anyway. And the whole thing about toilet paper is just really weird, because nothing about COVID-19 suggests you need more toilet paper than normal. I mean, there's a few people who may have had digestive issues with COVID-19, but it's not one of the most important symptoms. Fortunately, it's not like we've got a norovirus pandemic and everyone's got explosive diarrhea and vomiting everywhere and we need lots of, toilet paper and things. You probably shouldn't laugh about that, and hopefully that will never ever happen. But
some people will be well stocked and prepared for it.
Some people are, obviously. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been to a supermarket for 2 months. I mean, it's hard to accept that, and I will have to go in the next couple of weeks because I'm running out of something important like cheese. So first of all, I'd been traveling a lot in February and the beginning of March. So I hadn't gone to the supermarket because I just didn't need stuff because I wasn't home. And then the other thing is I get a misfit box every week. So I get a box of fresh vegetables and fresh fruit because it's one of those ones that's the ugly fruit. So from my values, buying it from them is more a value than buying it from my local supermarket, because they're taking the stuff that the local supermarket wouldn't sell.
Mm.
And they're selling, and it's fine. I mean, it tastes fine. It's fresh. There was some issues of things go off a bit quicker because it may be towards the end of the shelf life for some things, but not now. I mean, they've had a lot more customers, so I think things are turning over much quicker. So we're not seeing that. I'm not seeing that as much. But I mean, it doesn't. You don't have stuff that has the, you buy carrots or celery or oranges from the supermarket and they can basically sit on your shelf or in your fridge forever. It doesn't have that kind of shelf life. It probably a couple of weeks. But as I'm getting it every week, that doesn't matter. And it's enough. And it's probably a bit more than enough, but it also means I'm eating more fresh fruit and vegetables because I've got them coming. So that saved me having to go out. And then I'd been traveling when this really started blowing up, and I was in New Orleans the week after Mardi Gras. There'd been no cases in New Orleans or in Louisiana when I arrived. So the conference was going, and it was a food system conference. It was a very important conference for a lot of us. During the time that I was there, I think they went up to 2 cases, and they ended up finishing the conference a day early because the recommendations was to have 12 feet between. Social distancing recommendations had just come in, and there was no way at that hotel that we could do, honestly, there was no way we could do 6 feet. And so we ended up leaving early, and I realized at that point that I had been in New Orleans with a group of people that I knew nothing about their health issues. And then I flew back on a Friday night with a whole load of people who I knew nothing about their health issues at not the very beginning, but at the beginning of the big increase in cases. So I put myself on a 2-week self-quarantine. And when I did need groceries, I used Instacart. I didn't necessarily want to do that, but I didn't feel comfortable going to a grocery store when I didn't know what my health situation was. And I did need stuff. Like I said, I hadn't been to a grocery store at that time for about 5 weeks, and now it's 2 months. I mean, I'm lucky that most of my diet is based off dried beans, and like I said, I'm getting fresh vegetables in and things like that. The thing I have basically given up short life, shelf life dairy. So the only dairy I'm eating at the moment is cheese, and I know how to cook. I mean, so those are definite advantages that I had. I'm not worrying too much about the food in terms of safety, and that's something that your audience can take home. I'm not cleaning my boxes. I'm not washing my fruit and vegetables any more than I would normally. You're not getting this virus. I mean, this virus isn't attacking the intestine. So if you get something on your hands and you lick your fingers, you're not going to get it in your intestine. What's happening is if you get it on your hands and you stick your finger up your nose, you might get it. That's why they say don't touch your face, or if you get it in your eye. But the problem is it's attacking the respiratory system. So the issue is more being with people and breathing in aerosols and droplets that they've breathed out or sneezed out or coughed out. So that's the biggest issue. And that's why you're seeing more and more advice about wearing a face mask. And that face mask, honestly, if it's not a surgical one, and it shouldn't be a surgical one because we're short of those for the people who need them, is not necessarily going to protect you. It's going to protect other people from you. So, I mean, the wash your damn hands thing, the big thing I'm hoping is that people will continue washing their hands even in a year when we can start, going out and being sociable. Before this, 31% of men and 56% of women were washing their hands after going to the bathroom. And that to me is like, I mean, I'm a food safety person and I'm a food scientist, but I mean, that to me is like, how can you, clean your body down there and then not want to wash your hands? How can you touch a trash can and then not want to wash your hands? I think I'm doing a little more than I usually do. I didn't used to necessarily just come in the house and wash my hands, but now I'm doing that. The touching your face thing is hard. I sort of was joking with myself. You've got to entertain yourself when you're in an apartment on your own, right? So I was joking myself saying, every time I touch my hand, I should put $1 in a jar. I think I probably owe $100 from one day. I don't have that in cash.
Cathy, as someone who wants to end world hunger, I think one of the great gifts that comes out of something like this is it gets people more conscious about things than they might not have been otherwise. I think that I'm not probably alone when I say I'm being mindful of when I go into the supermarket and stuff's not available. And I think that you touched on it earlier. I've long hypothesized that one of the things with American culture, or first world cultures maybe in much ways, is part of the reasons we suffer so much is because we're so privileged and so blessed in our lives. We have abundance everywhere. And we've gotten so conditioned to, the thought never crosses your mind that when you go to the grocery store to get something, it's not going to be there. And then if you do go there, you never stop to think about the 1,000 times you go and everything's there. You think about the one time you went and it wasn't, and then you're inconvenienced or whatever for the 10 minutes it took. I think right now there's a really incredible opportunity where people are having maybe some sort of shift and they're looking and considering things differently, especially with actually experiencing some form of scarcity in their markets. As somebody who wants to end hunger, what attention can we bring to people's daily behaviors or to the food system as a whole where they could get behind that? Because you and I have talked before about some of the numbers, and it's startling to hear how much goes to waste every day.
Yeah.
And how much of an abundance there is, but how we're so responsible for that waste and how responsible we are for, things being ours. So is there something that we can all do as consumers of it? Is there something we need to be aware of where we can make changes with this?
If you're talking on the food waste side of it, one big change is, yes, we're buying a lot because we don't want to go out at the moment, but make sure you have a plan for it. Make sure that you know that if you're buying 5 pounds of potatoes, that you have 5 pounds of potatoes worth of meals planned for it, or you know how to store it. And there's a lot of information on the USDA website and other websites of how to store things so that they last longer. If you're buying fresh stuff like tomatoes, if you're not going to eat them all, work out how you're going to store them. You can store them in the fridge for a bit, or you could cook them up and you can make yourself a tomato sauce. The other thing to look at is where are you getting stuff from? Like I get my stuff from Misfit Markets, but I'm changing over to a CSA, hopefully in May, because I want to support the local farmer who's done a lot of good. I've gone to his farm to do gleaning for Farmers Against Hunger in New Jersey. So when I found out that he was starting a CSA this year, I signed up for it, and he does a payment so I can pay quarterly, and it's going to end up probably a little bit cheaper than my Misfit box. And it will also support the farmer. Find your local stores. Maybe if you've got a little bit of spare cash, do a takeout at a local restaurant, not one of the chain restaurants. Someone that, who is, especially if they're an immigrant or something like that, and they've got a different, different kind of food that you haven't tried before. Maybe support them. Definitely look at local. If you've got space and you're interested in it, think about gardening. I know a lot of people are going over to the idea of victory gardening. It's not easy. I've been gardening for years and I have failures still. I love playing in the dirt. I've been telling Jesse, I've got a tiny deck, just so people know. It's about 12 feet long and about 4 foot wide. And I started some seeds last weekend, and it was just lovely being out there and playing in the dirt. But it's not something easy. You've got to keep an eye on it. You've got to water it. You've got to, seedlings come up and they're very fragile, and you've got to not overwater them, and you've got to water them enough and all that kind of thing. So make sure that you look at how to do that. If you want to do that, or find a community garden, or find, some of the local school gardens may still be going and still growing stuff that you could support in other ways if you don't actually want to garden, maybe financially, or maybe buy seeds or something with them, ask them what they want. So that's another way to do it. And then just find your community. I'm struggling with that. Jesse and I have talked about this a lot. I'm fairly new to where I live in South Jersey. But find your community, even if it's online or whatever, find out what you can do for your community. Maybe your neighbors are elderly and need someone to go grocery shopping for them. Maybe they're not elderly, and maybe they've got asthma or they've got high blood pressure and they're really nervous about going grocery shopping because they're in their 30s or 40s and they look young, or they're like me in their 50s and they look young, and they need someone to do stuff for them. Just simple things, I mean, that they could do before, but now they're scared to do, especially people who are elderly and old, I think, are very nervous about going out. And especially in the poorer neighborhoods where people are closer together, we're definitely seeing more cases there where people don't have health. Find out what other organizations are doing. Nearly every town, city has a group that are doing things to help people who don't have enough. There's a group in Millville that you can just buy extra groceries when you go grocerying and then just leave it on her porch, and then she'll distribute it to the neighbors who are in need. So that's something to look for on Facebook. If you've got a door-to-door, I think it's door-to-door, next door neighbor or something like that. It's a website where you can join the local community, the neighborhood community. People can put requests up there and ask for help. That might be a good thing to try. So those are all things to try. Except that, you know, it's challenging. If you're working at home and your kids are home and your husband's home or your wife's at home or your partner's at home, whatever, or you've got a roommate that you don't, you know, normally see that much of because you both work full time and longer hours, that's going to be challenging. And if you're an essential worker, maybe you've got a neighbor who's an essential worker, maybe you can sort of offer to help them get some groceries and stuff so they don't have to go after their shift. So.
Food safety, we were talking about offline that even with COVID happening and it's not food related, food safety is still an issue. And there's still things that could come. You were saying that it's not inconceivable for an E. coli outbreak to happen. So on both fronts, the people producing it and then the consumers, what are the things that we need to be on the lookout for that? And how can we be more safe and responsible with our food?
Well, for consumers, I mean, the unfortunate thing about foodborne illness is you can't see it. There's ways you can treat your food, obviously salads and things you don't want to cook, but you can make sure you're heating your food properly. Getting it above, 150 Fahrenheit when you're cooking things for at least 3 minutes. And that will kill off any virus if you're worried about, that will kill off any virus, not just COVID-19. It'll probably kill off bacteria as well. And if it's chicken or anything, you want to go higher than that, 165, because chicken, salmonella is endemic in chicken. And I mean, wash your damn hands. What can I say? If you're a producer, I mean, the concern is if you're a food chain worker, as I would say, so that's anyone from the farm laborer all the way through to the retailer. I mean, start respecting the work that they do. We've seen now that they are definitely essential. That without the farm laborer picking and growing, the farmer growing and the farm laborer picking, we wouldn't have food at all. Well, certainly not fresh food. And without the restaurant workers who are struggling because they don't have jobs anymore, and without the grocery store, workers, they really are a front line for food safety. And we need to respect that. And we need to start giving them the respect in terms of, we've talked about this, making sure they get proper wages and that they can get paid sick leave so they can take time off when they're ill. I raised with you before that we've just seen that some of the meat processors, one of the meat processors in Pennsylvania has closed down for a few days because 164 people were positive for COVID-19 at that meat processing plant, which suggests that at least, one shift in one part of that plant, probably one person was ill and then it spread around because you can't social distance in a food manufacturing facility. It's not that easy. But now the meat processing plants are saying, yeah, we'll practice split shifts and spreading out the break rooms and making people work further apart. And it's like, you're doing that now, a month after most of the shelter in place were brought into place. Shouldn't you have been doing that a month ago? And so that's something as well, is just be aware of how the food system, if you don't know this stuff, start reading about it. Start looking it up.
Where can people go to start reading about it?
Well, if you go to my website, I have a blog and I blog a bit about this as well. there's a couple of organizations that I read. One is called The Counter, and the other one is Fern. That has a meaning. I can't remember what it is. It's like a resource network, food resource network. There's a lot of food information out there. I mean, it's almost overwhelming for someone who's into the food system at the moment. There's just so much coming out. But it's knowing who to trust. I understand that. And you're seeing some a bit flaky information.
What is the one thing, just sorry to cut you off just in the interest of time, because I want to be respectful of it. We only have 1 or 2 minutes left. What is the one thing the average consumer who's watching this right now needs to know about their food that they don't know?
That it's an international network. That it's not, that the whole world is part of your food system. From the poorest person in Africa to the richest person in, I don't know, what's the richest country in the world other than the States? You know, the richest person in the Hamptons, let's say. We're all part of the same food system. We might not recognize that, but we are. We're all part of that food system. And the sooner we recognize that, the more we can have an influence on that. You may want local food, but there's still going to be things that you're going to be getting that are international. Unless you're, you know, off the grid and you're growing everything yourself, which is possible, but I don't think you'd be watching this if you were off the grid.
Yeah, who knows? There's some cool Wi-Fi telecommunications now, right? I was talking to a friend who's in telecommunications the other day, and they were saying their business is booming because everybody's online more than ever. So everybody's trying to figure out how to increase their bandwidth and get more reception and all this type of stuff. So
yeah.
Cathy, this was fantastic. There's so much great information. Everybody, I consider you to rewatch, whether you're in food right now, whether you're manufacturing it, you're producing it, you're in restaurant, you're in groceries, or if you're just a food consumer like myself. I think there's some really pivotal ahas and insights here, which is considering the interconnectedness of everything and the idea that, you know, the food system is not broken. There's not a shortage of supply. I love the notion that hotels have stockpiles of toilet paper right now. It's not what we're familiar with. And consider this too is you know, and here in the US and I'm sure in other first world countries around the world, we've gotten so blessed and so privileged to have an abundance of food in every time that it's made it so easy for us to just throw stuff away. And remember that every time you throw a meal away, you throw food away, that's a food that could have been available for someone else who could have needed it. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. I felt that tickle coming on. I was hoping I was going to miss it. Who could use it? And who knows, like maybe our mindfulness that we could all do in our refrigerators or kitchens or dinner tables could really make an impact in the world. And I love that idea of be respectful of the people who are producing it. And I'd love to evolve conversations around that because, again, with all eyes looking at things differently, maybe this is the thing that we need to look at how we're prioritizing the people we hold up as heroes and celebrate in our world. And just maybe there's some opportunity for change with this. So Cathy, I appreciate so much you being a spearhead for that and sharing with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time on another edition of A Handful of Hope. Bye-bye.